Hi everybody, and welcome to this University of Cambridge webinar. We're just going to give it a few seconds just for everyone to join, and then we'll make a start on the webinar. Cool, okay, I think we'll make a start. So thank you for joining us for this webinar. So we're going to be talking about the foundation year and having a bit of a Q&A about admissions. You should have been sent a link to a Slido document, a Slido file where you can add your questions. We've already had some questions in. We'll show the link to that shortly. And just to let you know, this session is being recorded and we'll send that around as soon as we can. So you'll be able to sort of have a look back on any questions you want to review. But now I'll hand over to our speakers who will start us off.
Yeah, excellent. Hi everyone. Thanks very much for joining us this evening or watching on catch up if you are doing so. My name is Dr. Alex Price. I am the Foundation Year Course Director. And for the purposes of today's session, I'm kind of involved in everything. I oversee the admissions process. I often do manually verify candidates' eligibility myself. I also set the content for this year's admissions assessment, and I'm setting the content for the interviews in the next couple of weeks. And also when it comes to the day-to-day teaching on the course, I do a little bit of teaching myself and I oversee the teaching team. So I'm involved in everything. So if you have questions about the foundation year, hopefully that's a pretty good place to start. And I'm also joined today by a new contributor. Many of you who've come to these sessions before will be used to seeing Dr. Stuart Palmer, but sadly he's not available today. But I'm ably assisted by another colleague. So do you want to introduce yourself, Cheyenne?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Cheyenne Wardina, and I am a Director of Studies at Queen's for the Foundation Year students, which means I support them, support students in their time here and know a little bit about college life and managing that alongside your studies. And I'm also a teaching associate on the program, which means that I've got my hands in a bunch of different papers. I dabble a little bit in just about all of the streams, really, so I can sort of help answer questions on any of those. I'm also involved in interviews and bits of the admissions process, less so the kind of eligibility stuff, which I'll leave to Alex. But if you've got questions about what interviews are like or what college life is like, what the teaching is like, then I can help with those.
Yeah, excellent. And Cheyenne hasn't mentioned the fact that she's also a philosopher. That's her academic background, and she also teaches philosophy at Cambridge. So it's worth kind of bearing that in mind also, that you may get some pretty philosophical answers from her. So just bear that in mind as you ask your questions. You will note that sadly we don't have any students with us today. Unfortunately, term hasn't actually got underway here yet, and we couldn't find anyone that was available. So I'm sorry that the students weren't able to be here. However, Cheyenne and I will do our best to talk about student life based on what we know about what our students get up to. I will also say that there is actually a recent video that we've uploaded on YouTube featuring two of our students, Thea, who studies classics, and Ollie, who is a current foundation year student. So if you haven't checked that one out, check out Cambridge Foundation Year on YouTube, and you can hear a lot more about their experience of studying and what it's been like. There is also a special trailer that I'll give you for next week when we're releasing a new video about foundation year interviews. So we've actually done a mock interview in its entirety for the foundation year, and we'll be releasing that ahead of the UCAS deadline. So check that out. It'll be on the main University of Cambridge YouTube channel. So if you're not following them, it's a good idea to do that. So the purpose of today, this is the Slido. As Ash mentioned at the start, the Slido is how you can interact with us. And obviously we have quite a lot of time today to answer your questions. So you can either scan the QR code that's on the screen, or you can go to slido.com and enter that code. The code will be appearing on the screen kind of as we're doing those questions. So if you don't get to it right now, please don't worry too much, because you'll get the chance. But this is a chance for us to hear from you, hear from your questions, and hear what you want out of this session. Today we will be answering questions. That's basically the point of this. We're not going to have a PowerPoint where we kind of take you through, aspects of the course structure or admissions process. We are now 2 weeks away from the UCAS deadline. We hope that if you're joining this call, you are, hopefully entering the final stages of making your UCAS application. So we just want to make ourselves available And I guess this will work best if you if you send us questions that reflect all the questions that you have, either about the admissions process. I know that lots of people kind of obsess over that, but also about the course itself. You know, Cheyenne and I both run the course. We're delivering the teaching, so we can tell you more about what it's actually like to study here, never mind the kind of the admissions process that might get you there. So please do make the most of the opportunity. It does work best, I find, if you ask questions, if you phrase your questions in a way that's general enough to be helpful to everyone. If you have really specific questions about your specific eligibility or something really particular, probably the best way to get that answered is to email us. So our email address is on our website. Those of you who have emailed us will know that we tend to reply relatively quickly. So please, if you do have anything specific, just drop us a line, because it may not be appropriate for us to discuss, you know, details of individuals in public today. First of all, before we move on to specific questions, we have a poll here if you want to tell us what you want us to talk about. So I'll take a few seconds here for you to tell us what you want us to talk about, and then that will allow us to maybe get some idea of what we can best help you with. It's obviously only 2 weeks to go until the UCAS deadline. I will also use this quiet moment to tell you that the UCAS deadline is the 29th of January at 6 p.m. If your application arrives at 6:01, we will not consider it. Do not be late. It is a hard cutoff. It is instigated by UCAS, not by us. So please don't miss that deadline. And if your school UCAS coordinator has been bugging you to fix something on your UCAS application, make sure you do that, because that would be really helpful for us. Okay, some good things coming through on this. The transition from foundation year to undergraduate. Yeah, we can definitely talk a bit about progression. Lowest GCSE scores. GCSEs seem to have come up a lot this year. Cheyenne probably doesn't know this, but I've had a lot of emails about GCSE, so hopefully we can answer that and put that to bed. And then how do we decide who we shortlist for the admissions assessment? Yep, happy to speak a little bit about those kind of processes. If there's anything else that you want to make sure that we don't forget to discuss, do send it in now. And Cheyenne, again, while we're waiting, term's about to start, term's about to get underway. What are you most looking forward to about the term?
I'm most looking forward to being in the classroom again, because I missed a bunch of teaching. But yeah, seminars and stuff are always really fun, getting to talk to people about cool ideas. Yes,
yeah, Cheyenne lost her voice last term, so you're very lucky to be able to hear from her today, because her own students haven't heard from her in a little while. Excellent. So some other things. Can we apply from grammar schools? A number of separate words, which I think if I cobble them together, something about how do people view, how do we view resits? And what will the admissions assessment cover, and how to prepare for it. So yeah, those are all really good things. So my general areas that I will make a note to make sure that we don't forget to cover is progression, assessment, GCSEs, and resits, and grammar schools. Excellent. Okay, so thank you very much for that. That gives us something to get going with. I will now move us on to the these are kind of frequently asked questions, but we don't actually really need to get to these unless you want them. But a gentle reminder, if you haven't heard that we have eligibility criteria, is a very good idea to look those up, but I suspect that if you're on this call, you've probably already heard of them. So so please do check those out if you haven't already. So I'm going to put these questions up. You can you will hopefully now be able to submit your questions via Slido. Continue to do that, and what I will do is I will deal with those kind of areas that we're first kind of mentioned. So grammar schools. Grammar schools. Do we mind that people come from grammar schools? Can people from grammar schools apply? Yes, they can apply. Do we mind? No, we do not. I know some other programs that you may have heard of are not keen on selective state schools, and indeed you might not be able to apply. Our foundation year does not mind whether you're in state education or indeed if you're at an independent school. So there is no problem if you're at a grammar school. Progression, and how does that kind of transition work? I'm maybe going to throw that slightly to Cheyenne, because that's a kind of a college question, and as Director of Studies in your college, you kind of oversee that.
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And I suppose the slightly cheeky answer would be to say the whole thing is preparing you for progression. But I take it that that's not the specific question that's being asked. So it's a bit more helpfully. In terms of progression to particular programs, we do try and coordinate and connect students with relevant other students and directors of studies in subjects that they're interested in fairly early on. So in college, you'll get the chance to talk to lots of students who are already on programs that you may be interested in. You can sit in on lectures that are going on so you can get a taste of what they're like. You can talk to, so director of study, just to sort of clarify that term, is the person, the contact person, staff member in college who kind of oversees your studies. They're responsible for making sure academically you're doing all right and are getting the help you need. And so there will be a director of studies for the programs you're interested in. So for instance, Alex mentioned I also do philosophy. I direct studies for philosophy. So I have a bunch of undergraduates who are, throughout their 3 years, they're working with me, and I can talk to incoming foundation students or potentially interested foundation year students about what the subject is like. So that's sort of the progression transition stuff that we can help you with in terms of what the kind of environment is like, learning about the structure of programs. In terms of university life, college life will look largely the same to you, whether you're an undergraduate or a foundation year student. You're sort of living in halls, eating in halls, you're able to join any of the societies and clubs. So some of that transition will actually be quite seamless. The only difference is you may be sort of doing lectures and doing assessments at the same time in the same kind of way as the other undergraduates once you progress, but as a foundation year student, it may look slightly different. And I think other than that, like I said, somewhat flippantly to begin with, in terms of academic skills, that really is what the whole program is about. So essay writing, reading, how do you manage your time? That's all stuff that we're thinking about right from day one, right from induction week, really. And that ideally is designed to help you make as smooth a transition as possible into undergraduate study. Alex, does that about cover it? Is there anything you think I should?
Yeah, no, I think that basically does cover it. Yeah, I think this is a foundation year. At one stage, it was actually called a transition year because the whole thing is designed to help people transition into degrees at Cambridge. So yeah, that definitely covers it. I'm gonna take a swerve then to the admissions assessment. Someone said, "What is in it?" Which you will forgive me that I will not reveal the content of the admissions assessment because that would kind of defeat the purpose of it. However, I can tell you broadly what kind of shape it's going to take. So the first bit of it, the first section, is basically a reading task, and you read an extract of something that I have carefully chosen for you. You actually get a choice of 3, so you can choose the extract that sounds most interesting to you, and then you have an hour to answer some questions about it. Those questions are probably different from things that you would be used to seeing in school, but they're designed to get you to think critically about what you've read, and therefore if you're prepared to do that, then you hopefully won't find it too challenging. And then in the second half, you will get to choose from 2 videos, and the idea is that the video represents, so if the reading task represents what a student does independently to prepare for class, reading and then thinking critically, the video represents what happens in class. So when you're hearing a lecture and then you're kind of responding to that lecture in your kind of notes or something. So in that section, you will then have to write kind of a response to that video. So there is on our website a sample paper that I've put together based on the videos and the texts are the texts that we used last year. So you can see them, and that's kind of realistic. And the questions are kind of as close as I can get them without giving the game away entirely. So do have a look at that. As to how you can prepare for it, obviously looking at that sample paper is a good idea. And then otherwise, actually realistically, it's like a kind of unseen kind of test. The whole point is meant to be that you just respond to it. You can't revise, there's no set readings. You just do what you do within the time that we have, and that is what we are looking for. That's what we're really testing. So yeah, and there will be a webinar before the admissions assessments that we'll run, that will go into kind of a whole load more practicalities about it to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into, and we'll discuss it a bit more in detail then. Low GCSEs, that was another question. Are low GCSEs a problem? No, we don't have a GCSE entry requirement, so we don't mind. So if you're worried about that, please don't. There are students with low GCSEs on our course. We've had students in the past that have only a handful of GCSEs because they weren't able to study anymore. And we have students that actually did really well at GCSE, but then had a dip in sixth form. So really, we don't mind. So please don't kind of overthink that. Likewise with resits, people get very kind of vexed about how we perceive resits. Often we don't even really know why you're resitting, so please don't worry about that. We have had students who have done resits on the programme before. That is not a problem, so please do not worry about that. Excellent, so I can see we have some questions here, so we'll start kind of taking them as we get them. The one at the top is, what's more preferred, volunteering, shadowing, or work experience, and how can I get that? I hate to tell you, I kind of don't really care. Cheyenne's shaking her head too, because she agrees. So it's not just me being a mean person. At Cambridge, the main thing we're interested in is your academic suitability. And I know there's this kind of idea that if someone is this kind of perfectly well-rounded individual, that, you know, we will be more likely to like them. I mean, it's nice if you're a well-rounded individual, but that's not what we're looking to admit you on the basis of. We're looking to admit you on the basis of your academic suitability for our course of study. So there is no magic formula in terms of, you know, if you do X numbers of hours of volunteering and have done work experience with top firms or something, that we will be more attracted by that. We won't. Not least because we understand that for lots of people, it's actually not easy to find time to do these things. If you've got other stuff going on at home or something, the likelihood of you having access to these things is actually quite slim. So please do not worry about that. If you have done those things, yeah, you can write about them in your personal statement, but that's not a deciding factor in whether you're going to get a place or not. This person asks, how can I efficiently use a book I read from my personal statement? Cheyenne, do you want to try this one? I know you because you do read personal statements as part of admissions, but it's a hard question to answer, this one.
Yeah, so I think maybe part of the best way to answer this question is just to say what we look for in a personal statement, and then that might give a better sense of how a book can be used effectively. In a personal statement, what we're looking for is enthusiasm, which I know is cliche, but does actually make a difference, and an interest in you know, the things, the topics that you're interested in, some like and enthusiasm and fire in the way that you write about it, right? So if there's a book that you found particularly challenging or intriguing, then you can work that into what you're saying about, I don't know, your love of sociology or why you're particularly interested in politics. But it should be part of your personal statement is a narrative about what you want to do in higher education and why. So don't feel the need to drop a book in as or a particular author as a way of signaling to us, look, I'm really well read. Again, it's a foundation year, and we're not interested in specific bits of content that you already have under your belt. What we want to know is, why do you want to do this? And so use things that you've read or encountered, if it's a podcast or if it's a documentary. Use anything that you've encountered that helps to demonstrate your excitement for higher learning and a particular subject or subjects, but don't worry about kind of trying to pass a test of I've read the right things.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think people sometimes think that they've read the wrong books or something. But if you've done anything that's given you kind of good insight into your subject, then that's what we're looking for. We're not looking for the right book, or indeed the right thoughts about the right book.
Exactly.
What we're looking for is just some kind of engagement. The other thing is, I will note that also sometimes, like, one of the things I like most about personal statements that I read for the subject that I'm involved in interviewing for my college is English. I actually like hearing what books people are reading, because sometimes if I haven't read them and the student makes a compelling case, I go away and read them. So think of it in that way. It's a dialogue where you're communicating your passion, and the best personal statements for English often make me think, wow, if that book has made that student think that, maybe I should go away and read it if I haven't read it before. Because funnily enough, we haven't read everything, even though we do try. Excellent. A good question here about any advice on how to best answer the why Cambridge, why foundation year element. So that is a question on the FY SAC, the foundation year supplementary application questionnaire. If you haven't heard of the FY-SAC at this point in your admissions journey, it's a good idea to look at our website and find out about it, because if you apply, you will receive it and you'll have to fill it in. And one of the questions on that is kind of what interests you in the foundation year at Cambridge. What the best answer will be is an answer that's authentic to you. And I know that that's going to annoy you because you want me to tell you exactly what I'm looking for. But the best answer is going to differ depending on the student. So, I will say the best answers are not too generic. They're not kind of sort of boilerplate of, I really want to go to Cambridge because Cambridge offers supervisions. That in itself would apply to nearly every student that applies. So what we want is a person who has reflected on why they want to come to Cambridge, and it could be that supervisions are part of that, but it should be going deeper than just that. It should be telling us about why you think you would enjoy supervisions. It should be telling us about why you've made the decision to apply for this course, because you've given up one of your UCAS choices for us. That's a big deal. So why did you do that? Tell us why. That is probably the best way to do it, and it will be specific to you, and therefore, sorry, my cat's just meowed, which doesn't help matters. I know that sometimes people try to, like, ask former students what did they write for theirs because it worked for them, but it worked for them often because it was specific to them. So that probably doesn't necessarily give you the answer that you need. A good question here about how to deal with feelings of doubt throughout the application process. Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's something that probably lots of people will be thinking, should I bother applying? Am I even good enough, to put in an application? Will I get shortlisted? Is it better just to not bother? And that's something that actually you need to learn to deal with throughout your entire academic life and career. What am I doing here? Is this a good use of my time? Am I good enough? Those are all questions that even the academic staff at Cambridge sometimes ask themselves. So a good question to ask. I would say probably my number one tip is, if you're not in it, you cannot be considered. And I will say that I have had frustration in the past where, for example, a student, I won't say which year it was, but a student once attempted the admissions assessment. They believed that they had fluffed it and therefore they withdrew their application. And I couldn't tell them by email, don't do that. You were in the top 50 for the admissions assessment, so you have a really good chance at interview. So just stick with it. But they believed that they had fluffed it and therefore they counted themselves out. So the number one worst thing that you can do at any stage of this process is just count yourself out. So please don't do that. A little bit of self-belief. It is one of 5 choices. That is a big deal in the sense that you've made that choice and we appreciate you making that, but also you have other things on the table, you have other things in your future. You are clearly a talented and resilient student, or you wouldn't be considering us. So, the admissions process can feel high stakes, but, if you count yourself out, you definitely won't succeed. And as I said, sometimes the students that have the most doubt are actually the ones that actually are doing fine and really shouldn't worry. Cheyenne, do you have any thoughts on how students should cope with doubt?
Yeah, so this is, as Alex said, this is not a thing that goes away quickly or easily. So fake it till you make it, really. Don't expect to not feel doubt. You will feel doubt. It's going to suck. But don't make any rash decisions, as Alex said, off the back of that. The thing that I used to tell myself was, well, I'm not going to lose anything by trying, right? And I even, I even used to sit around going, well, that was a pointless thing to do, but would still do it, right? And I don't advocate thinking that. I really hope that none of you is thinking that, but absolutely leave it to the experts to decide, as it were. And in terms of the feelings themselves, look for other outlets, try and distract yourself. Do not ruminate on your applications, because once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. You've done everything you can. Try and find other outlets to take your mind off things.
Yeah, they're a really good question, and actually should be reassuring to everyone else who's doubting that someone else has asked that, and they're not the only one, because I know that is something that students worry about. And I have seen students discount themselves either because, they're too nervous about the interview, or they think they messed up the admissions assessment, but actually the only person that they've kind of messed it up for is themselves, because actually they were potentially doing fine. Excellent. There are a couple of questions here popping up. So what would they ask in the interview? Because my personal statement isn't necessarily based on the foundation year subject. So what would the questions be based on? So there will be another webinar covering interviews for those who are shortlisted. So we will go through that in detail. But basically there are different kinds of interviews. One of them will be on a text and the other will either be on a material / object, a thing, or some language samples, or on some data. So it will definitely be on one of those things. Personal statements are not generally a big kind of element in almost any Cambridge interview, actually. They tend to focus a lot more on kind of making you do new stuff rather than asking you just to repeat stuff that you already told us. So don't kind of worry about that. And as I said, there will be another webinar where we'll go into interviews in way more detail and we'll kind of unpack exactly what it will look like. But yeah, so if your personal statement looks at, I don't know, engineering, we will not be talking about engineering in your foundation year interview. I will say if your personal statement looks at engineering, you should be using your FY-SAC to communicate why you're applying for our course. That's pretty important because otherwise we will just think that you made a mistake, because sometimes people do. Excellent. Are extracurriculars important in your personal statement or are supercurriculars more significant? So for those of you who aren't familiar with the difference kind of between extracurricular, supercurricular, extracurricular is, I don't know, hockey or football or playing the piano or those kinds of things that are kind of not directly related to your studies. Supercurricular are things that stretch your knowledge. So if you're interested in politics, it might be listening to politics related podcasts or documentaries. If it's archaeology, it might be attending a dig to dig up some old stuff. What's a good supercurricular philosophy, Cheyenne?
More reading,
More reading,
or listening to podcasts, or some people will put things down like essay competitions that they enter and this sort of thing.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, generally more reading is pretty much the answer for all of the subjects in the arts and humanities, but there are other stuff that you can do as well. Like if it's politics and you're involved in political campaigns or something, that might be relevant too. But yeah, so basically for academically selective universities, of which Cambridge is but one, and if you're applying to us, you may well be applying to others as well. The answer is that supercurriculars are definitely more significant. The personal statement is designed to tell us how prepared you are for a course of study, not how good you are at hockey. Even if you're really good at hockey, which is cool for you, but you know, you're not studying hockey unless that's what you're applying for. So extracurriculars, we often say like 80% academic in focus, which can include your supercurriculars, and like 20% no more on extracurriculars if you feel you need to include them. And that's a pretty general rule across most of the kind of academically selective universities. So yeah, that's a good idea. Is there anything in particular that you've seen in the past with previous candidates that stood out to you in terms of what you should or shouldn't do? Oh, that's a good question. Cheyenne, can I come to you on that one and see what makes a candidate stand out in a good or bad way?
Yeah, so I'm going to answer this from an interview perspective. Well, I think one of the best things to see in an interview is someone who takes the time to sort of reflect on and think about their answer and is willing to say things like, I'm not sure, that's not clear, could you clarify? The best piece of advice I can give for interviewing is that it's a discussion, not a sort of test of knowledge. So people who come into the discussion willing to kind of interrogate their own views, be a little bit creative, those are the people that stand out the most to me.
Yeah, I think in terms of students that stand out for me for bad reasons are often those who haven't read the instructions. So, you know, we do provide lots of guidance on all of the stages of our process, and we try to be as upfront as we can. In fact, if anything, we probably provide much more information about our admissions process than like any other university in the UK. So we are open about this. And, you know, this is why we've made ourselves available for an hour just to take your questions. We are open about this. We provide that information. Choosing to read it is a really good thing to do, and when we get questions that are simply answered or that's kind of a little bit annoying, and also then that means that people who, for example, you know, have not turned up to their interview at the right time or have not communicated a need that they have in good time, all of that just makes it really hard for us to provide you with the best experience, and that's ultimately what we want to do. In the admissions assessment, people that stand out for the wrong reasons either have plagiarised and committed what we would call academic misconduct, so that makes them stand out big time for a bad reason, and that means that their application doesn't go forward. We remove people from the process for that, and every year it happens. I think last year it maybe didn't happen. I think that might have been the first year it hasn't happened, but usually at least someone does it and they get removed from the process, so don't do that. And then the other reason that people stand out in the admissions assessment for a poor reason is just that they have blind panicked. So they have just panicked, or they have pressed the wrong button, even though we give them instructions, and therefore they've kind of messed up their opportunity. So that they stand out for the wrong reasons. People who stand out for the right reasons in the admissions assessment have read the question, they have clearly relished and enjoyed what we're asking them to do. I know it sounds crazy, that the idea that this is an exam, but you should be enjoying it. It should be something that's kind of fun and entertaining, and should be challenging you and inviting you to think in all sorts of exciting ways. So that will make you stand out if you've clearly enjoyed it and you've followed the task and kind of pushed it as far as you can. And kind of the same in interviews. People who are sort of enjoying the discussion stand out for the right reasons. People who are so afraid that they cannot contribute stand out for the wrong reasons, because we want you to do well. We know that you haven't done what you're probably capable of, and that's really, really sad. The other thing I will say about interviews is there was one candidate who stands out for the wrong reasons, and that is because they had, so we tell you, like, for example, that your extract will, we'll give you an extract and we'll say like an extract about an extract from a novel about love. That was like a description in a previous year. This student had been so keen to impress that they must have spent many hours researching the theme of love in very broad terms. And when they came to the interview, all they wanted to tell me about was their previous research, not the text that I had given them. And that stood out for all the wrong reasons, because I thought, no, you're not doing what's asked, and therefore I don't think that I could work with you. So that stood out for the wrong reasons. So again, yeah, just do what we ask. That's all. Good question. Is it worth mentioning an essay competition even if I didn't win the award? Cheyenne, you mentioned essay competitions already. Is that something that you'd like to see in personal statements?
Yeah. I mean, it shows a kind of enthusiasm and sort of drive, even if you haven't placed. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree, actually. Yeah, again, we don't expect students to have done essay competitions. There's no kind of like bonus point because you said you did an essay competition, but it's always nice to see students, mainly because it gives you a chance to talk about something that hopefully you're kind of interested in and maybe proud of. How, and a kind of a related question here I see about summer schools. How significant are completing summer schools? If I cannot do them because I don't meet the requirements, what are some activities I should do instead? Again, if you've had the opportunity to do them, great, that's fine for you. It's nice to be able to reflect on your personal statement. But actually, I mean, people don't just do summer schools because they're going to be able to write about in the personal statement and get into university. They do summer schools because they want to experience something and explore something and do academic stuff and, spend a week away from home. That's why people do them. So yeah, I kind of dislike this idea that you just do summer schools just to get into university. That's not what it's there for. That's kind of missed the whole point. But yeah, if you haven't been able to do summer schools or you're not able to do it, reading is a great thing to do. Podcasts, documentaries, local events that are local to you. Maybe you can't do a summer school, but there might be a public lecture at the university nearest you. There's loads of things that you can do. You could look at, Cambridge has a website called HE+, and HE+ has a kind of a selection of kind of starting reading lists or activities that you could find. There are loads of things that you can do. Getting on a summer school is not the be all and end all, especially because we know that some of them do have kind of weirdly specific entry requirements, or maybe you just missed the opportunity, or maybe you have caring responsibilities and you can't go. All sorts of reasons. Here is a good question that's been sort of floating around for a while. How do we ensure students really integrate with current undergraduate students, especially at more prestigious colleges such as Downing? I will say I disagree with the idea of more prestigious colleges entirely, but basically, how do we make sure that students feel like they're part of the university or college? Cheyenne, do you want to make a start on that one?
Yeah, so the first thing to say is that things will vary slightly from college to college. So I'm speaking based on my experience at a couple different colleges. They will have slight variations, but they will be variations on largely the same sorts of approaches. So the way that this kind of works is that it's kind of a multi-pronged approach where first we want to connect students with other students. So foundation year students aren't kind of siloed off away from everyone else. They live with all of the other undergraduates. There's a kind of mentorship program that each college has, and so they'll get buddied with a student from a sort of first or second year, so that they can kind of guide them through college life. And usually we try and buddy them with someone who is not only is either a previous foundation year student or is someone who is in a subject that our current FY student is interested in. And then, yeah, FY students are invited to all of the same sorts of activities that your first year undergraduates are. So any of the college induction, social events, societies, fairs, you can join the teams, you can join the sort of student government type bodies in the colleges. So the colleges will, as much as is feasible, not discriminate in any way between the foundation year students and the first year undergraduates. They're just treated as a whole. These are all people who are starting at this college. And that's a big part of how students are integrated into college life. The other thing to say too is that some people find that they have a really strong affiliation with their college. Other people find that they have a really strong affiliation with other societies outside their college, university, kind of more broad societies, or even like particular groups of friends and activities with other foundation year students. So I think to address what I think might be the anxiety behind this question, you will find your people. And if that's not at college, then that's okay. And there's lots of students who really thrive, even if college is not the place where they really find their people. On the other hand, for some people, it's the other way around. College is where they find their people, and sort of everywhere else, they're like, it's not they're having a bad time, but they really feel at home at college. So it'll be different for everyone, and there will be a space for everyone.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think the other thing to note is that we do have a foundation year society that is set up to connect you with other foundation year students. Obviously, there's lots of other societies. If you could imagine it, a society exists for it. And yeah, I think, yeah, what's underlying this question is ultimately the idea that there won't be someone like me there, or that I will be kind of discriminated against because of something in my person, whether that's ethnicity, whether that's class, whether that's disability, whether that's kind of anything. But the reality is, there are no unicorns in Cambridge, or if there are unicorns, there's a whole field of them. There are, you will not be the only person from a certain ethnic background here. You will not be the only person with a certain type of disability here. You will not be the only person from that part of the world here. There may be less, in some circumstances, but your people will be out there, and it's just a case of kind of finding them. And yeah, I would say, in all of the colleges that are admitting students for the foundation year, you would also not be the first foundation year student there. There have been people who have gone before you, and in many cases they have forged a path for you. And there will always be people that aren't familiar with the foundation year, and they may ask questions about it, but that's often coming from a place just of, I'm curious as to what this is. And if there ever was anything like that did go wrong, there are loads of people around that want to support you through this and want to hear you complain about someone who's rude or something. And that's just a part of kind of, university life. You meet people who you don't like. Unfortunately, not everyone is best friends all the time. But, in general, our students integrate really well. We've had presidents of JCR, so the common rooms in the colleges. We've had a couple of JCR presidents who have come from the foundation year. We've had people who've been the president of their ball committee, so organising the summer ball. We've had people organising art things. We've had people in student journalism. We've had people competing for the university or their college in sport, or being the captain of their college team in a certain sport. So the students integrate really well. So I think it's probably a less of a concern than most people think it might be. I'm going to take this other question about progression. So how many students progress on to undergraduate study? In each year we've had so far, obviously we're only in our third year of the course now, we've had the majority of students stay at Cambridge. and that means that they've reached the kind of level to stay. The exact percentage does vary year on year, and that's because the people on the course vary year on year. But the majority of students do stay. It's somewhere around 70-ish%, so about 3/4-ish are staying each year. And obviously we hope that we will improve that in the future as we get better at supporting our students and kind of communicating the expectations and all of that. But yeah, so the majority of students do progress. And I will say, even the students that don't progress, many of them still believe that this was a really worthwhile thing to do. This idea that kind of it's Cambridge or bust. Many of our, we've had students who could have stayed at Cambridge but decided not to, because actually, it's a year to learn and grow and to find out what you really want from life. So there are students who choose not to stay at Cambridge as well, and I think it's really important to note that as well. It's not kind of Cambridge or bust. You can still learn amazing things from being in Cambridge and have had an amazing experience here, even if the outcome is not staying at Cambridge and doing a degree. How do you balance stating your achievements and talking about your chosen subject and interest? I'm guessing that's in the personal statement, because we probably don't want to hear your achievements in interview, because we want you to do what we're asking you to do instead. Cheyenne, do you have any answer on that? I think it's kind of, it's a personal balance to you, I guess.
I think so too. I think the most important thing is sort of relevance to the kind of disciplines and subjects that you're interested in. So if your achievements and your interests are relevant to your academic aspirations, then yeah, put them in. And if they're not, then that's a good reason to kind of to leave them out. It's hard to kind of put a number or proportion on how exactly this should be balanced. Yeah, I think that's about all I can say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people worry about the personal statement, but it is but one part of the application, and there's kind of no right or wrong answer, really. A good question here about how are learning difficulties taken into consideration during the admissions process. This is a really good question, actually, because this is something that lots of people miss about our application process. So when you apply via UCAS, you will receive an email that we call the welcome email, because it's basically, hello, we've received your application, here's some further information. And on that email, there is a form called the FY Adjustments and Allowances form. It's a snazzy name, but basically, if you have anything that you think we should know during the admissions process, that could be that you get 25% extra time for exams. It could be that you have trouble hearing, or you have problems with your vision, you have processing disorder. Anything that you think is likely to impact our assessment, let us know. You get your school to sign it. You will be asked to provide some evidence of it, especially if it's something that, like say you need 25% extra time. And when we receive that information, our disability advisor this year is helping us to go through all that. She's used to seeing all these documents, so she will know exactly what she's looking at. And if we receive that information, we can make the adjustments that you need. If we don't receive that information, or if we receive it too late, we may not be able to help you. And that is not, unfortunately, if you only tell us on the day of your interview, oh wait, I can't see the screen because I have a vision problem, our ability to adjust is limited. So the sooner you tell us, the better. And we are very, used to the most of the kind of 25% extra time, being aware that spelling and grammar we shouldn't penalise you for. We're very used to that because we have large numbers of students with a whole range of different things. But also think about not just the 25% extra time for essays or something that you might get in school, but also think about things that might be specific to interview. So I had one student once who didn't turn up for their interview, and when I rang the school to find out why, they told me the student was a mute. They hadn't thought to mention that until that point in time, and that made it very difficult for us to make adjustments for them. But, a student who maybe has a kind of, maybe they struggled talking with people, or they might not look at the camera, or they have some sort of tic or something, anything that you just want us to be aware of in that environment, please let us know, because then we just make a note on it that says, this person may take time to form their answers or may need questions repeated. If we know, we can make those adjustments. So please use the adjustments and allowances form to tell us, and tell us by the deadline, because we need to know the information in time to be able to actually act on it. That's a really good question, though. Thank you for that, because that will hopefully help lots of people. Let's see. I've interacted with a lot of podcasts on my chosen subject. Are books preferred since they're seen as more academic, or is it more about what you've taken from it? I'm going to throw that one at Cheyenne.
So this is a tricky one. I think for our purposes, I'm just as happy to see that someone's been engaging with podcasts as with books, but it is what you've taken from it. That's the most important thing. So if you're talking about the sort of the most academic book, which is is the reference that everyone mentions. If you don't tell me anything interesting about what you took from it or why you found it interesting or challenging, then that's going to be far less compelling to me than someone who's talked about, I don't know, watching Crash Course on YouTube, but they've really thought about what they've heard and listened to, and they've got some interesting questions, or they found it changed their thinking in a particular way or prompted them to look into something else. So yeah, it's absolutely what you've taken from it, what you've done with it, that I would say is important.
Yeah, I would agree on that. I don't necessarily have a preference. If someone was only referring to any one type of thing, so if someone's only talking about one book, then that's as worrying as someone that only talks about one podcast. So kind of sort of a variation of things and showing what you've taken from it is best. I'm going to take this question on subject choice. Does your subject choice impact your application in any way? Particularly, I guess, as someone who's thinking that law is, very competitive. We get lots of applications from people who want to do law. The answer is yes and no. So I would say that your subject choice matters in the sense that when it comes time for colleges to choose who they're taking, they have 5 spaces for the foundation year. They do not want to admit 5 people who want to do law. They want to have a kind of balanced cohort. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you should lie about your subject choice, because actually that is a bigger problem. Because actually, if your personal statement talks about law, but you've told us you really want to do Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic, we may not believe you. So please, honesty is key. And I will say we do not have a quota for subjects. So that's one thing. On a kind of macro level across the course, we do not say that we will only take 5 lawyers a year or something. So please don't worry about that. And the other thing is that we also do take your subject choice with a pinch of salt. And I say this, I'm sorry. I know right now that you very much believe that law is the thing that you want to be doing. But in our experience, about half of the students on the course end up changing their mind on the subject that they end up doing during their time with us. So bear in mind that we do take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt anyway. So please don't kind of worry about that. There is no way to game the system by saying that you desperately want to do Anglo-Saxon, Norse and Celtic. That will not make you more likely to get a place, is kind of the short answer. What do we look for when we're looking at references for a foundation year student? That's a good question. Obviously, the best references reflect on your academic suitability for the course. They will be written by someone who has taught you or knows about your kind of education. There's nothing particular that we're looking for in a reference in terms of kind of what it tells us. We see great variation in references. I've seen references that say, for a student who's on the course this year, this student attended our school. And that was it. And I've also seen references that have used every available character to tell me that this is the most amazing student ever. They are most useful when they do tell us something about you as a person, and that kind of lines up with who you actually are and lines up with everything else in the application. Where your reference, the referee can include things on extenuating circumstances, especially things that are not otherwise captured by your UCAS form or indeed by our eligibility criteria. So it can be helpful for them to explain your extenuating circumstances, and also it offers a real kind of useful check and balance for us as well. So if you've told us something, it may save us having to go away and check at a later date if we can also see that the referee has mentioned it. So those are some of the things we're looking at in terms of a reference. Cheyenne, I don't know from references you've read if that differ, if you have any different points on that.
No, I mean that about covers it. I think, yeah, I guess the more specific to the student, the better.
Yeah, I will say I have just written UCAS references for this year's students who also apply elsewhere as part of the course. And I can tell you that having written 50 of them in the last kind of couple of weeks, if you're a teacher listening to this, I feel your pain. We know what it feels like to have to write that many references. Really good question here. How are students with disabilities supported during the foundation year? So I will say that we have relatively high proportion of our students have some kind of disclosed disability, and that includes everything from kind of neurodiversity through to kind of physical disabilities. So like all students at Cambridge, students with disabilities are well supported at Cambridge. We have a central service called the Accessibility and Disability Resource Centre. And from that kind of centre, you get assigned a disability advisor. So that's someone who understands Cambridge and, more importantly, understands your circumstances. So they're professional with experience working in student support, and that means that they can kind of help to kind of unveil some of the things that you might have access to. So, for example, your disability advisor can help you apply for disabled students allowance. They can help maybe direct you to the assistive software that might benefit you. And they also can assign you a mentor or a study skills advisor, again, specific to your kind of needs. On the foundation year, our disability advisor is called Deb. Deb is wonderful. Deb is a wonderful person. She's a key part of our team. She comes along to all our meetings. We chat with her all the time, and you can meet with her. She actually comes to the building where our teaching is, so you can actually catch up with her lots of times during the term. Some students arrive fairly well knowing what they're likely to need. Maybe they've had an EHCP in school or something, but also some students arrive knowing that maybe something's going on, but not quite knowing what that is. So we can have screenings. And also, I will say that for our kind of assessment on the course, just as in school, we have the ability to put in reasonable adjustments. So that's, that can be extra time, that can be wearing noise cancelling headphones, it can be one-to-one invigilation, it can be kind of on a sliding scale of complexity depending on your need. So please be assured that we are very well used to supporting students. Cheyenne, from a teaching point of view, do you bear in mind kind of disability support in your actual lessons?
Absolutely, yeah. So again, Deb's been amazing with this. So what we try to do with our teaching design is to make it inclusive by default. So a lot of the way that we design teaching in terms of the kind of visual formatting, the approach with what's the word I'm looking for? Formats, like sort of styles of teaching, whether it's all visual, whether it's all just talking at you. We try to make it so that people who learn in different ways at different rates, who have different sort of prior needs, are still able to access what we're doing without us having to single anyone out and say, oh, and this is the thing for you. That being said, if what the general kind of design is still, leaves something where there's a gap to be filled, or there's some other accommodation that needs to be made for a particular student. So for instance, we were in a previous year, we were asked sort of, we've got students who find it difficult to sit still through an entire lecture. Is it okay if they pace a bit at the back of the room? And just having a heads up from Deb, who's able to communicate students' needs with us in an anonymous way, and we can sort of say, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. We're very flexible, I think, is the most important thing. We want to adapt things so that our sessions are as useful as they can be for students, and that's the priority.
Yeah, and likewise from a college point of view as well, if you need a particular type of bedroom for any particular reason, whether that's en suite, ground floor, or anything like that, your college also is well used to dealing with disability support, whatever that is. And a question I see here, are the 52 spaces for the foundation year spread across the 4 subject streams? I can see why you think that, but that is not true. So we have 50-ish places a year, and because students are not assigned a stream, so you're not kind of admitted only to do material sources or only to do textual sources. You're just admitted to the foundation year, and students take different papers in different streams throughout the year. No, the only kind of limitation, I guess, in terms of numbers is that each college takes like around 5 students. That's kind of the only kind of real sort of thing to consider. There's no quota on progression subject. There's no quota on kind of likely stream preferences. And to give you an idea of what that means, some papers on the course papers sit within streams. Some of them are more popular than others. Cheyenne often teaches some of our most popular papers, and that does mean that, if every student wants to do a certain paper, we will make it so. This term we have something like 41 students doing our paper on South Asian religions, which was a surprise to the person convening that paper because it's not usually that popular. But if the students want to do that paper, we will make it so. Yes, there's no sort of limitation, and you're not kind of tied down to a stream. And then a final question about supercurriculars for a subject that's different to the degree you apply to. I'm not sure I fully understand this, but I'm guessing so you're talking about supercurriculars for a different subject. So I'm guessing this is where you've got a personal statement about a different subject. That's kind of fine. I guess, again, in the FYSAC, we are really looking to understand why you want to do a foundation year in Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences. If you're just doing a foundation year in Arts, Humanities and Social Sciences because you want to come to Cambridge and you don't care what the degree's in, that's probably not a good reason. And we would be seeking to understand why you've applied and clearly thought hard about applying for something like computer science elsewhere. Yeah, that would be my only kind of advice on that. Use the foundation year supplementary application questionnaire to really unpick why your personal statement is on something else, because obviously this is a very competitive course. We get many more applications than we have spaces for, and we don't just want people who want to come to Cambridge for the sake of coming to Cambridge. We want people who want to come to Cambridge because they want to study at Cambridge and thrive academically here. That is what we exist for.
Alex, if I could jump in here, I'm not sure if I'm if I'm interpreting the question right, but I don't know whether this example is one that someone's given as a hypothetical or is specific to their case. So in the specific case of you've done a bunch of STEM stuff, then as Alex says, definitely indicate in your FYSAC something about why you're interested in a social sciences and humanities foundation year. But if the question is what happens if you've done adjacent supercurriculars that aren't in the subject that is the thing to which you're applying, you know, say you're interested in the foundation year and we don't progress to geography, but you've done some geography stuff, then tell us something about the way in which you think that's applicable, right? Because absolutely, you don't always have opportunities to do supercurriculars and stuff that's exactly in the area that you want to do. But I'd say, you know, with my background in philosophy, if someone's done a bunch of things in politics or law, I'm still interested in that because there are adjacencies, and I'd like to hear what the student thinks those experiences can bring to their study of a particular discipline. So just to kind of cover some bases here, I'm not sure exactly what was intended by this question, but
yeah, no, that's good. That's why I have my philosopher here, because she often understands things in a different way to me, which is very good. Excellent. Thank you very much for all of your questions. We are sort of getting to the more of them have appeared. Oh, excellent. Okay, is the foundation, well, we'll keep going then because we have got a couple of minutes. I thought we'd run out of questions. Is the foundation year team looking to add in more subjects in the future, such as geography? A good question, and probably above my pay grade. It's not something that we're actively looking at, so it's definitely not happening this year, and it's definitely not happening probably next year. But obviously the university, this is a pilot program. We're still kind of keeping things under review, and the subject mix is something that I guess is up for consideration. But yeah, there's no kind of certainty on that. I'm interested in different subjects, which is what draws me to the foundation year. Yeah, being flexible in interest, not a con. We like flexibility. We also see students that might be applying for like sort of liberal arts type courses elsewhere. So it's really not an issue at all. And yeah, that's, you know, being flexible is actually something that's really good in the Cambridge context in general, because academic flexibility is, intellectual flexibility is really vital to the way that we teach. But also that subject flexibility, yeah, it's great actually. We like it because it means that when we get you, we can work out what really makes you tick rather than you coming in and being sort of so set on a certain course or path. So yeah, that sounds really good and positive.
Alex, can I ask a follow-up on that?
Yeah, sure.
What if I'm applying and I don't know what my specific subject interest is?
Yeah, so you can tick a box on the FYSAC that says don't know. And that's particularly the case. So often people have like a first choice subject. So like, you know, say they know that they want to do, I don't know, history or something. And then that we ask, what would your second choice subject be? And these are non-binding. They're just like sort of for information for us at this point. But there is a box that says don't know. And there's also a box that says subject isn't listed here. So if you don't know, it's fine to tell us that you don't know. It's helpful that your subject was in the arts, humanities and social sciences, obviously, because that's something that we teach. So if you know that you want to do some kind of essay related subject and that you're interested in something vaguely social sciencey or vaguely artsy, but you don't know exactly what that is, that's more than acceptable and definitely something that we're used to seeing with our students. And often they arrive, as I said, often they arrive thinking that they're interested in the subject, and then after like 2 weeks, their mind is blown and all options are back on the table. So that flexibility is definitely not a bad thing to have. Excellent. I think that does bring us to the end of your questions. So I'm just going to show you one little slide here, which is to tell you, because this is the last podcast last webinar in this particular kind of series, kind of pre-application, because the UCAS deadline is but 2 weeks away, which is very exciting. But you can revisit these webinars either through the recordings that are available to you via the kind of the login screen that you get. You can also visit our YouTube channel where we have a couple of different videos. Some of them are very poorly made, so please forgive me for that. But some of them are pretty cool, like these Applicant Support Programme podcasts, so you can listen to current students talk more about their experience. We also do have a newsletter which gives kind of advice. and details of upcoming events, student insights, stuff like that. And basically the next stage is, if you are applying this year and you are shortlisted, when you get your email telling you that you're shortlisted, which will come out, I believe, in early March, you will get an invite to further webinars. I highly recommend these ones because they unpick exactly what these next 2 phases will be. The admissions assessment is the focus of one, and interviews are the focus of the other. They're designed to come just in time when you need the help and support. You will attend those. So if you're shortlisted, you'll get an invite to those webinars. But for now, that's all the help that we can give you at this stage. Go away, write your best personal statement, get your forms in on time, do what's asked of you, read the guidance on the website. And if you're in any doubt, drop us an email. We wish you all the very best of luck with your applications. If you're applying, we really look forward to receiving them and to reading more about what kind of interests you in the course and what makes you tick. And we wish you all the best of luck with the application process. Don't let doubt put you off. And yeah, you've done the right thing by finding out more about the course and by asking us your questions. So thank you very much for listening. If you want to send us feedback before we log off, you can scan the QR code, or I believe it's probably on the Slido where you've been sending your questions as well. We always love to hear your feedback because it helps us justify continuing to give our time up for these webinars. So I hope you all have a lovely evening. Get going with your UCAS if you haven't, and I will look forward to hopefully hearing from you soon.